7 o'clock, we're going to call this meeting to order. I make a motion to call the meeting to order. Do I have a second? I don't have to. I just call it to order. Okay, then let's stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Kathleen, it says on the paper that you have to lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Make a motion for the executive session.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session. Do I have? Thank you. All in favor?
Discuss.
Oh, to discuss them.
Discuss.
To discuss special education.
But I think we have to do settlement.
Settlement out of district placements.
Did you hear about like a free fall?
Of course. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Who's second? I did.
Okay, unanimous. We're now going to go into the other room where we're going to executive session.
I can cut everything here and just walk out.
My bags. That was nice. You can send her out.
I don't want Mark watching us in seconds.
Mike had a
Paul, it's not a motion. Paul.
I'll call to order.
Oh, shit.
Okay, discussion item, update on special education action plan. Dr. H.
Okay, just checking to see if this is on. So I was able, we posted the PowerPoint and the recording last week. But before we get started, I do want to introduce, this is my team over here. Everybody where? And that all the work that we've done, I couldn't do without having a great team helping me and working with our teachers and our staff out at the school. So I want to give them credit. Sure. Okay. I don't know that this goes. So we have Leah Zilich, who is our coordinator at the high school in our community connections. And Teresa Fox, who is our elementary and middle school coordinator. Dan Katz, who is our special education administrator, who does our out of district placements. Joe Baines, who is our elementary coordinator, and Dr. Garfield Charles, who is our program administrator over at Windrose. So I guess I will start with if there's any questions based on the presentation.
Kathleen, go ahead.
So I don't know if this is working, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, so 28 initiatives, right? And you're at 5 of the 28 right now, is that right? Or more?
13.
13, that's a big number. Okay, and the plan to get to 28 is how many years?
So when we wrote the plan, we did a 3-year plan. So most of we have of the initiatives that are started. So in June, we had 5 and that were implemented and at this point, and at this point, the 13. Most of the other ones are at partial implementation. So when we're looking at implementation, we're looking at not just have we done it, but is it like part of our practices within the district. So the goal is to have them completed within a 3-year time period. So if we're 2023, so at the end of the 23-24 school year.
So you feel like you're on track?
I do feel like we're on track, yes.
Christina.
One particular statistic I was really impressed by, Stacy and team, was about the referrals being completed, getting from a 71% to almost 97%. I don't know if you want to just talk about that, because that's a pretty impressive shift in such a short amount of time.
So we've been working really, okay, I gotta, it's my microphone. We've been working really hard with our schools and our teams, and I want to give our school teams credit too. A lot of this is setting up systems in place to make sure that as parents are making referrals, the school are making referrals, that we're doing it in a timely process to make sure that our evaluation teams are aware of it and can start doing the evaluations as soon as possible. We monitor that and make sure that everything's on track and making sure that when we see that maybe we aren't going to meet it, what happened, so that we can correct it to make sure that it doesn't happen. And so that's working with each of the schools and all of the school teams to make sure that everything is happening in the sequence that it needs to happen.
And just about, I know there's a new like software, right? At the start of the year, I was talking to some of the assistant principals, it's just about the new state software it is, I think that you guys are using. Has that been helpful? Not helpful? I don't know if you want to talk about that. As Tony laughs.
Yeah, as everybody laughs. So the state moved from IEP Direct to CT SEDS, which is a new IEP system. Once we are all onboarded and know how to use the system, I think that it makes the IEPs much easier to understand, to read. It's more of a logical layout. However, the transition has been difficult. The rollout from the state was not as smooth as we could have hoped. Although I was at a school today and I did have some of the teachers say, you know, that now that they're into it, they like the new program. And I said, I'm going to record you because it has been a challenge. And a lot of time this year from our staff has been spent learning to use the program and troubleshooting. So some of the progress that we have is in spite of the new program, not because of it. However, I think that as we move forward, there's portions of it that will actually support some of the work and the recommendations. Progress monitoring is one of them. So there's a requirement in the goals and objectives in the new system to talk about how often you are progress monitoring. And so as we look as a district of what we're doing as a progress monitoring system, those goals will tie into that, which then gives us better data on student progress. So it will in the future, but not this year.
Michael?
That's a good segue because.
See, I was thinking of your question.
Right. So she knew I was going to ask about progress monitoring. This is awesome. And well overdue and really great accomplishments. And so the accomplishments, it looks like we're moving the way we should be as far as these accomplishments that we've got so far, a lot of organizational accomplishments and system things in place. And then some of the more lagging indicators are going to be around student achievement metrics, which we know are coming in next. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about where you see that falling in as we continue to roll out the audit recommendations, and then particularly around progress monitoring and universal screeners and all those other tools that we're coming online.
So in relation to progress monitoring universal screeners, Kim Palladino is really leading a group in looking at what we can use for progress monitoring. And we do have members from my team that are also part of that, as we have experience in many different progress monitoring over the years and in different districts. And I think that as we look at that district wide, that helps our in special education, because we want to keep consistent. We don't want one system of progress monitoring in general education and a different for special ed. It would be the same system. And so we're looking at what that would be that would be able to follow students. I think in terms of student achievement, the things that we're putting in place, I think are raising the bar and raising the expectations for students and providing good instruction. One of the other metrics is if we look at the number of AP and honors classes at our high school for our students with special education needs or 504 needs, and we've increased in just this last year from 41% to 49%. So we are seeing that increase in achievement of students. I think also when we look at the professional development, being able to provide resources, and I tell teachers I want to give them a toolbox. So we have different trainings in reading for them to help work with students. And at the last board meeting, Mike Reed talked about some of the math that we're looking at in terms of intervention for students. And we'll, starting in February, our K-2 special education teachers are doing a writing revolution training to start working on the writing. So we're really trying to look at how we can provide that intervention so that students can access the curriculum and we see that higher student achievement.
Because you've talked about this, right? You see a lot of the training, the IEP training this year, professional development, some of it's been around the new system and learning the new system, but a lot of it's on increasing the quality of the IEP itself. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so right now, on the program Wednesdays, we've done small groups, and it's so nice to be in person again, with our teachers and looking at how do you determine what present levels are? So what is the data that we use? And then based off of that, how do you write goals? So again, the better we can use our data, understand our data, and write our goals, the better outcomes we're going to have, because we can target the skills that we need to be working with our students on.
Well, no, I was just. gonna
Karen?
say,
Like one of the bigger, from the flip side, since I know that Michael Joseph was looking at the data, on all different things. I'm going to look at the other side, which is from the parent perspective. And so I was going to compliment you on the amount of information, because we talked so much about the need for forward-facing documents for parents who are new to this program, new to the district, who don't necessarily understand the processes behind special education and what it parent meetings and parent requests, all of that can entail. And I've noticed so much more information has been shared up on our special education page on the website. There's information that leads us to the new IEP system and program to the state, and training videos and all sorts of other things, in addition to the parent newsletter that comes out. Is it every other month?
2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. I'm sorry.
Every other month.
I was like, every other week. This is what happens when I'm exhausted. But and so I just think that that's been an incredibly positive support for parents in the district. I know that, schools, we've talked about this, are working to have coffees with parents. The only thing I would want to ask, because I know we talked about this on the side, I know we as parents at the high school haven't gotten much information or coffees in that way. And a lot of students often, especially going through the pandemic, have discovered academic needs that fall under this category. And parents are new to the program coming into the high school. So I'd really love to be able to get that support for high school parents as well. And I know you mentioned in the program some of the revisions to the academic labs. And so I'm just curious as to how you've sort of improved in that area as well, since I think that that's something parents might want to know, because often high schoolers don't tend to talk about that sort of stuff.
High schoolers not share information, really? We did have a parent coffee in January, I think, or the end of December. It kind of runs into where we were able to go over the new IEP system. But I think taking and maybe looking at our next coffee and going over the updated course descriptions would be a really good way of furthering providing that information to parents. Last year, we had an academic lab committee that really looked at redoing the course description. And with the timing of the course guide, that wasn't something we were able to get into last year. And so Leah was able to get it into this year's course guide, as well as update some of the course descriptions of some of our more specialized programs to give a better idea of what actually happens in those programs. But I think being able to, that might be our next coffee, to be able to share that information so that can get out to parents.
Well, then this is a conversation and just a comment as to how many, who is invited to these coffees? Is it students, parents of students who have IEPs only? Is it parents of students with parents who have students with 504s as well, or those on the cusp? Is it all inclusive?
So this was for
That's
parents.
at all levels, by the way, not just high school.
Great. So most of them, they're put out to all of the families they have that fall under the SESS. So most of them are called the SESS coffees. So it's not IEP or 504. And that goes out through at the individual schools, either through their Aspen or through, they have their quarterly newsletter. And if I know, I put it in my newsletter to get that out. I know, like for the high school, I had it in mine to kind of help get that out. And then it got sent out to all the parents. I think sometimes one of the struggles, and I've had this conversation with Jonathan Sopranowitz too, is like making sure our systems are updated so that everybody everybody gets it, which is why often, like he puts my newsletter in the Friday update that Dr. Jones sends out. And then we can make sure that somebody who might have just qualified, who hasn't been identified yet, still can get that information. I think that my newsletter goes out to close to 3,000 people now. I'm like, didn't know that many people. I start getting the little pops ups like 500, 1,000, 1,500, but it's nice to know that people are looking at it. And when you can look at the metrics and it's like, people actually read it. But, we try to find as many ways to kind of get that information out. I think it's hard because there's so many flyers that go out and, there's so many places to get information. So we try to put it out so that the most amount of people can get that.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you because like I said, so much of this had been, I won't say shrouded in mystery, but parents were very confused in years past, and the transparency and the openness that you and your staff have shown in helping parents through this process has been wonderful. So I really want to just say thank you for that huge change on that end.
Thank you. And we have some upcoming with all the transitions, preschool to kindergarten, 5th to 6th, 8th to 9th, parent, just information sessions for parents about the bridging process for our special education students and what that looks like. And we're about to have session 2 from the CPAC, the Connecticut Parent Advisory Council, on, the kind of like the ABCs of special education. We had one last month that was really well attended. So trying to just get that out and, try to get as many parents to participate and be part and share as much information as we can.
Well, I was going to say for any parents that are new to the special education program that may be tuning in, a lot of those sessions have been recorded, I think, right? And are up on our website if you missed them in the past. I just thought I'd make sure to give that a little plug for all the great work that's being done. It is being able to be shared after the fact.
If nobody else, I'll wrap it up. Would you like to?
I just want to say, so thank you. The report was very excellent explanations and just kind of really laid out in a very, not the video was good, but the report itself. And I guess my question, Joe, is, do we have slated a final year-end report, or what's our next? I don't want to put Dr. Stacy on the hot seat too frequently because she's doing such a good job, but I think it's good for us to get periodic updates because we're already in February, maybe, I don't know, on our agenda planning, maybe in June.
I believe that there's one in May.
Okay.
And actually,
So question.
So last year, PCG had kind of done a run through and an update. And so they'll also be doing a review and an update at that time, because I think it's, I love being able to come in front of you and tell you all the positive things, but I think especially in transparency and just the history of everything, to have the same person, really, Jennifer Mueller, who completed the report, to be able to come back and report on progress, I think adds validity to all the work that we've been doing.
Great. So I'll wrap it up with, 3 years ago, when I got involved with everybody here, kind of seemed that the special education was kind of broken. And over the last 3 years, it's kind of getting fixed. And that's really cool. I have little to add because I don't have any expertise in this field, but I did experience a great sense of pride over the last 3 years watching this program. Because of you people back there, because of you, Dr. H, because of everyone involved, this thing has progressed. We have satisfied customers, or at least it appears, because we certainly didn't have satisfied customers some time ago. And our customers are also in this, our partners. And it's very important to have our customers as our partners, because we can make all these decisions and fix what was broken together as a team. So as I said, I wish I could participate more. I don't have enough expertise to really help, but I'm glad we do have members of the board that have tremendous expertise that have contributed. But I don't know how to express it more than I'm very proud of the work that you guys and all the team, all the board has done on this. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Yes. Thank Thank you.
Okay, cool.
They are. I couldn't do it without them.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for waiting. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.
Very nice meeting with you. Thank you. Oh, no, yeah. Did you remember you? What was that?
So they can take back and he's doing great work.
Exactly. Okay, we're gonna go to the action item, the strategic plan. It says Dr. Jones.
You have to put the
No,
motion on the table to start the discussion. But
I
Mike,
asked Michael to make the motion, but Dr. said,
So I would like to make a motion to approve the draft strategic plan goal document as what? As
you shouldn't say draft because if you read it off the cover sheet,
plan goals document as posted, as presented.
okay, we have a motion. That motion has been seconded. All in favor, please rate. Oh, that's right. And now it's time for discussion on this item. Yes, Michael.
Thank you. So it was a year ago, believe it or not, that we first brought up the concept for the new strategic plan, and we introduced the concept of stretch goals and SMART goals and the relation, and the strategic plan committee and the district leadership team got to work, and we've obviously had this draft before the board a number of times and gotten some feedback. So what you're looking at right now is a revised version based on some of the feedback we got from the board in December. Obviously, you notice that the mastery of reading goal and the mathematics goal are now goals 1 and 2, and the graduation rate is number 3. Other than that, most of the other goals remain unchanged. We did have a conversation, and so you remember at the board meeting last time, the board members talked about the idea of on the second page of the document, combining goals 4, 5, and 6 into one overarching goal that had different metrics for community, student, and staff. I had a conversation, a couple conversations with Dr. Jones. We went back and forth around the merits of that idea. Ultimately, the thinking was that an overarching goal might have too many metrics because you still would need different metrics for each of those components. And as far as it being able to be digested by the community, it might be better to separate it, even though that does mean that it's more work for the leadership team, because now we're still looking at 6 goals. We're looking at 6 action plans and whatnot, and different change ideas and things like that connected to each one. But the thinking, I'll let Dr. Jones comment on it, but the thinking was that seemed to flow better and align more with a lot of the ongoing work that we're doing as a district.
Christina.
yeah, I agree with Mike that I think keeping 4, 5, and 6, because they're really separate and distinct populations we're talking about. One is about our families, one is about our students, one's about our staff. So I like keeping them separate. So I'm glad you decided to do that. And I agree in terms of implementation, it's also, while more work, it's also going to be cleaner because you can really dive into one particular goal if you feel that's an area that needs to be focused on.
Anybody else? Karen, you want to thank Mike? Thank you, Mike. Thank you for all the hard work you've done. And the team, of course. Let's put it to a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor. Against. 2 against. 6 You could say something.
If I may, so the next steps for because this is the beginning, not the end of the road for the strategic plan. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done as we know. So this is as we've been talking about, so these are goals, right? And we know there's work ongoing, but there's going to be there's a lot of work as far as a public facing document, better for public facing documents around action plans for each of those goals. And so that's going to be the work over the next year, and the next thing that'll eventually come to the board. The also want to keep in mind that the other alignment is how the other work for the strategic plan committee is to see how to talk about how these goals align with this year's school improvement plans, and then obviously as the schools go to develop next year's school improvement plans, how it aligns. And then obviously next fall, when we look at achievement metrics, achievement data and achievement metrics, it'll all be aligned to a lot of the goals in the plan. So it's very exciting in that what we've got here now is we do have a roadmap here around really some concrete student achievement metrics and other metrics that we can use to really chart our progress as a district and help all of our students better realize the vision of the graduate.
Perfect. Well, there's just one more thing I'd like to add, then we'll go to you, Christina. I'm a little proud of the work you've done, and not as much as I was the other stuff. So, but it's still pride. One thing I'd like to add to votes going forward is you have the right. I would like to offer you the right, if you vote against an action item, for the record, to state why. You don't have to, but you can if you choose to.
I've stated my objection lots of times and it hadn't changed. And so I didn't feel that it was necessary to prolong it because it's still the same objection.
Same answer.
Just so you can have the votes again, so for the record. Thank you. And Christina, you had something?
No, I just wanted to follow up on what Mike was saying about the next steps, just to understand, so that all of us understand what the committee's doing versus what the administration's doing, how you envision that. Obviously, you probably have to have a conversation, but just so that, you know, you were talking about the school improvement plans that the committee is going to work on versus what the administration is going to be doing.
So good points. And it falls into the next conversation, the next board topic as well. Yes, from the beginning, and I want to be very clear, right from the beginning, we have made it very clear that the strategic plan has to be owned by Dr. Jones and the leadership team. And so they're responsible for charting a lot of these goals and identifying what is. And the same thing with the action plans. The strategic plan committee is an oversight role that helps support that and facilitate, but we're not drafting action plans. That wouldn't be our role.
Okay, time to move on to board goals. Mike, are you ready to talk about board goals?
I am very excited.
Fantastic.
Is it possible to put the Michael, is it possible to put the PowerPoint on the screen?
Sure, give me 1 minute.
I did not. So I know the board is disappointed that I did not record a video, a recording for this. I know it is very hypocritical of me. I was asked rather late in the day to put this together. So it's a late request. So
I mean, I'll let you go, but I was going to say, we had a substantial discussion on the initial document. Was it May? No. What is that?
That might be last year's presentation.
That was strategic plan. Should be on board docs.
It is.
While we're waiting for that, why don't we talk about like what we're going to do timeline? We can talk like logistics. Yes, because obviously we're sitting here in February and we're talking about board goals. So in my mind, and I had been thinking as we start talking about it, which is I think a worthy conversation, that we're almost creating our goals that we're going to ultimately vote on or put into place for next year, because we're already kind of such a chunk of the way through the year that this is a discussion about, you know, obviously some things we're already doing that Mike's put in here, but this is almost right. I don't know if that's what people are thinking or kind of.
what you're seeing at here, these are not in all any kind of projected goals or anything like that. That wouldn't be my role. What I was asked to do was just kind of frame, kind of set something up to frame the discussion, right? So I know last year Kathleen brought up over the summer the idea of board goals, which we'd had in years past, and there was a document that circulated, and then CMS happened and lots of other things happened and stuff. And so as a result, you know, that we as always, we moved on to other things. So if I would submit that going back to the idea of board goals is a worthy conversation. It'd be helpful to keep in to try to understand what the difference is. Like how if there's three sets of goals, you know, the difference between the three. So that's kind of what I tried to do very briefly on these slides to suggest the thinking, and we can have a discussion of whether this thinking is accurate or not. So if we've got the strategic plan goals and the board goals and the superintendent goals, as someone watching at home and things like that, so what's the difference? Why do we need all three? Is that overly complicating things? And maybe it is. So that's a worthy discussion itself. So the next slide just tries to define the strategic plan goals, which obviously we've just approved. And those fit into that category of the idea of the stretch goals, right? These are goals, these are ambitious, long-term 5-year goals that really speak to either student achievement metrics or stakeholder engagement metrics. These aren't things we approve every year. They're set for the long term. And the idea behind the strategic plan is very much focused on our core function, when it comes to instruction, and the work of students, right, and their experience. It's very much the goals of the strategic plan, right? It's all about fully realizing the vision of the graduate, and that means math, that means reading, that means graduation, that means stakeholder engagement, that means faculty engagement and professional development. And that means student ownership and of their own education and support in the building. So all of that is represented in the strategic plan goals. So that's kind of like our vision, but also very much core to our very much central to our core functions. There's nothing in here about capital. There's nothing in here about facilities or any of the other things that we spend a lot of time talking about, because that's really not strategic plan. But we're talking about student achievement metrics. Some of those other things on the next slide do speak to Dr. Jones's superintendent goals, right? As we know, the superintendent goals are annual, and the superintendent goals we approved this year, some of them speak to strategic plan metrics, but others don't. Others speak to the other annual priorities, the other priorities that she has as the chief district executive. If we're looking at timelines, right? Right now we have the tradition of these being reported out in June and kind of being talked about a little bit in the BOE evaluation process. Although some of the metrics really don't come into play until September once we get the state, or won't come into play till September once we get the state things. So it's kind of a beginning and end of summer conversation is how it's going to end up being. And it's characterized also by student achievement metrics, but also organizational outputs. So if that's the superintendent goals, what would be the role of the board goals? So on the next slide, I don't see those necessarily as annual benchmarks or long-term vision, but board goals, the way we might define it, if we think it's helpful, is really about us, right, in our work. It's not about the work of the district. It's not the work about the schools. It's not about the work of student achievement. It's our work as the governing body for the school district. So in that way, they could be annual. But they could also speak specific to really the 6 main areas of our work. And I got some examples on the next slide, but they could be about board objective. Oh, hold on one second. Sorry. I didn't mean to cue you there. Thanks, Michael. So they could be specific to committee objectives. They could be specific to board accomplishments. And then as far, Christina, as timelines, so that's where I wonder if we might think of them differently because we have this weird thing in that unlike superintendent goals, which are kind of governed by the school year, as a board, we will reorganize every November. So I'm wondering if this might be and that's when we create the new committees and things like that. So that might be, the board goals might go on that cycle, which also, as far as if you're thinking of our work over the calendar year, might also be more manageable. Think of it that way too. So some examples now on the next slide. So for example, so Karen Hirsch wrote very thoughtful goals document when our first stab at this over this last summer. And she talked about, and she identified 6 goals in those, and a goal for each of the board domains, working with Kathleen. So I put some examples of what some of these possible board goals could look like. And then it was also in the attachment, I put one for each one. So for example, if in the domain of student learning, you can see a board goal wouldn't necessarily be, we want students to grow this much in math achievement next year. That's in the strategic plan. But a board goal might be, you know what, we want to try to refocus in our meetings this year. Let's try to make sure we refocus all of our presentations to be grounded in these student achievement concepts. Or maybe a board goal is, you know what, this year for health and safety, we as a board really want to focus on bullying, and we want to have more, we want to make sure we have reports on our agenda this year around how looking at our bullying procedures and policies and things like that. Maybe that's a board goal that we have. So it's really spelling out from regardless of areas, it's really spelling out from a governance perspective, some of the things as a board that we might want to think about. I've seen other districts and other boards, they have basically cycles, and they say, this year we're going to look at almost like curriculum cycles. Like this year we want to look at this program, next year we want to look at that program, and things like that. So setting those kind of priorities as a board through the board goals could be a way that helps govern some of our agenda items that are not just annual placeholders, but things we want to work specifically at. So that's it. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The how board goals might be different from superintendent goals and strategic plan goals.
Karen?
I was just going to say the last, so I don't know which one. Well, I was going to say, I know I had originally drafted this as we as a board discussed this, I believe it was in June. And then Michael Joseph sent some suggestions, which you see reflected in the document here today. And I was just going to note that the last time the board actually set goals in the original document in June, you'll see them, was in 2019, the following year, I believe, 2018, 2019. And then, the year after that, they had some that never got approved. But we do have a policy that talks about yearly Board of Education monitoring and self-evaluation, which is purpose of having these goals as a board, is how we, you can't monitor your work if you don't have, a placeholder for the goals that you're setting for yourself. So I think that that's one of the main reasons that boards set their separate goals, which again, tie into sometimes a strategic plan, superintendent goals, and things that we as a board would like to see done in the year.
Other Karen?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we passed the superintendent goals for this year.
So that is correct. By contract, I have to present the goals. We don't actually have to vote on them. It's been our practice that we do. And as we talked about it, as you remember, we were struggling to get my goals approved. We didn't have board goals. We didn't have the strategic plan. My goals were matching a strategic plan that still had a lot of drafts to go through. So, yeah.
I made the decision at the time that it was all we had to do is present it. I saw your contract. You didn't need to approve them. So I stuck with that.
But historically, we've approved them.
Yeah, but it's not part, it's not a part of our contract.
But it's good practice.
Yeah.
I was going to
Yeah.
I
So,
think
but I think we got bogged down, shall we say, between the strategic, like kind of the interplay
I
between
understand
them.
that, but I
No, but you're
do
right.
think that for the sake of good order and the fact that we've done this until this past year. And now that the strategic goals have now been placed, it is worth putting back on the agenda for purposes of making sure that those things are aligned. And they very well may be already aligned based upon the work that Dr. Jones was doing and drafting it. But I do think that it should come back before the board and the board should approve them.
The only thing that I would say from a superintendent standpoint, it's February. My goals do end in June. And I mean, certainly we drafted the staff along with the committee, the strategic plan. So of course, my goals, even initially when I brought them to the board, matched the draft of the strategic plan that we were looking at. Certainly we can bring them back, but what we can't do is go back to where we were at the beginning of the year, where everyone was weighing in and wanting to change them when I really didn't have a marker to even benchmark them against, not having board goals or strategic plan. So just because it's already February.
Might I make a,
Just one comment. The value of hindsight. We look at those goals, and heck, you might have achieved a lot of them already. So we'll take a look at what we have and see where we are. And I guess we'll make a decision on that and have further discussion. Laura?
So I'm of two minds. I think Tony's main goal should be to support the vision of the strategic plan. What else is there if not driving the bus for this district in the direction of student achievement? I mean, what else do we really require of a superintendent? Obviously, developing a budget, and maintaining our facilities, and all of those things. And I'm looking at our board goals. These are I do believe our priorities are very well aligned. And I always hated the process of self-review, right? It's like if your boss is too lazy to pay attention to what you're doing, they ask you to write your own review. And I think it's, so you say, like, I wish I wasn't such a perfectionist, I mean, it's like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of useless information. I feel like if we're all aligned, we have our goals, we're driving student achievement, we're looking out for the social emotional health of our students, we're trying to increase engagement, all those things. I really do think, we're kind of aligned, and I don't really know that I need to hear Tony create a bunch of other goals that aren't the ones that are the most important. So I'm sort of two minds.
Well, just keep in mind as an example, like.
Can we just, I think Karen was ahead, then go Mike. Sorry.
that's fine. I was just going to make a recommendation because we are in February, June is coming. But I think the issue that we have had somewhat in the past, yes, we got caught up with COVID and that sort of changed how we set superintendent goal, or the superintendent set goals and we approve them, whatever it may be, or weighed in, is maybe that we take this goals document and work towards what we do for next year, since we're so far into the year. I understand that the need to have those, and you're already most of the way through the year. And yes, clearly some of them may have already been achieved, but I think our problem last year, and the reason they didn't get approved, and then they get given, instead of getting them towards the end of the year, you set your plan for the year, at the end of the school year for the following year. It's your work over the summer to focus, et cetera. So maybe we use this as a basis for a discussion going forward for the following year's goals. I know this discussion now is actually about the board goals, not superintendent goals. So, that's kind of what I wanted to get us back
To start talking about some of the things on here, or how do we want the process of, what do you think of, kind of looking at the drafts that Mike did, or, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we can weigh in on them. What's most productive?
Just chime in. I was just going to generalize as far as, if I may, my experience in the corporate world. You have production, P&L, performance. You hold people who are goals are put in front of them. Well, you compare how they did versus what they did, and you figure it out from there. If we're going to do something as clear to obviously see and do, then it makes sense to put sort of goals in front of us. It's always good. Business wise, it always made a lot of sense. Have goals for the chair, have goals for each committee member or each of the committees to achieve or accomplish certain things. We've seen in the past committee members that sat on committees and weren't very productive, and some that were very productive. So maybe we need to go committee by committee. I think Michael's suggestion sounded quite interesting. Did you achieve a lot in the ABC committee? That was great. You did that. Cool. And the chair, Joe, you kind of stunk at chair. So please, you should be better next time. And somebody should learn from your performance. So I agree. I think we should certainly do something, but I don't have enough experience in what you're very experienced in, Michael, to actually set goals in such a way. And Christina, you wanted to talk,
Well, I just didn't know if we want to do, because, comments, I just back to process, like, what's if we have comments on these or things we'd want to change, do we want to discuss them now? Are we going to do it right? Like, how do we want to handle, I think these are a really good starting point, but then if we want to start, do we want to have a discussion, or it's not as late as some other meetings, or do we want to do this by sending comments to Mike? Or I just want to understand the process.
Karen?
I would suggest that we send comments. Like, we've got a good starting point here, and I think it'd probably be beneficial if we circulated comments, but did it so like we normally do in the budget committee, the budget documentation, right? So we see comments kind of in fluid time, so that we're not even repeating, or we might have comments to comments, which is also fine, just to keep the process going. Because I think we could sit here for a while, but I'm not sure we're going to get much accomplished in that.
I don't disagree. I just want to kind of and I didn't know if this is necessarily Mike's responsibility. So that's what I was kind of like, if we're giving comments, who's running the comments was kind of where I was going. Not to play tag.
And even, well, I was just going to say, on his point of committee goals, before I even looked at his document and on this suggestion, we had a policy committee meeting yesterday in which I raised the topic for the committee to say what are our goals for this year, and what would we like to get accomplished as a committee. And we did talk about those kinds of things, and I think on a committee level that makes sense. But now I'm done talking, because I think we should do this by paper via email.
I think Cody wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I agree. This would benefit from longer period of reflection.
Wonderful. One more comment. Go ahead.
It's not a comment. I was just going to say, we have had these in front of us without the revisions since June, but I'd be very happy to, I had told Mike before we walked in here, I'm happy to work with him on it, because it was initially, I had started the process and he's jumped in and improved, and I'm happy to work with him if you'd like.
I think we've all now decided something we're going to think about a little bit. And Laura, do you have a motion to make?
All right, so we should say, wait, no, but I'm trying to be actionable. So Karen and Mike are going to we're going to either have a doc or something, and we'll put things in, and we want to give ourselves a time frame. That's another goal, to get our comments in.
Just one point on that. Do you want to add it to the work of the strategic plan committee? Because I'm not that I'm asking for more work, because I clearly wasn't.
I don't think this is going to be anywhere near the amount of work.
I'm sure it's not. However, I'm just saying it kind of falls in line with the continuing work of that progress, and maybe it keeps it a good thing to keep it in parallel, but I'd throw it out on the table. You won't upset me if you change otherwise.
No, I'm fine by that. And I know people are shuffling papers, and Laura has a motion to make. I'm wondering, process wise, can we all add to a Google Doc? Can we all give comments that way?
Shared doc, if you set it up as a shared
Set up
document,
a shared doc and they can put comments.
you can set that up, right?
I can. Yeah. Okay, because we didn't all, that's okay. That's fine. Then we'll have to do
I
that.
will check what we can and cannot do in such a thing legal wise, which I'm sure we'll find.
Well, the one question we would have to do to work backwards and is to look on our agenda plan, which agenda plan setting is not in this meeting, which is where we would bring this back for discussion / vote. Because at this point, yes, we are halfway through the year. The discussion is when,
But if you
for how many.
if you go into Mike's theory of a November cycle, yeah, I guess that's the question of, I guess it'll be half your goals this year.
If I,
It's
if
a
I
partial
may,
year.
I'm gonna take control again of the meeting, and hopefully this is the last, or maybe one of the last comments that Dr. Jones would like to make for the evening. And then, of course, Laura's gonna make a comment, but
Yeah. I was just going to remind you from an FOI perspective, just be sure that you only put your comments on there. You don't respond to each other or respond to somebody else, what they've put on the document. Otherwise, you're having a meeting without having a posted meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
well, I'm gonna give Cody the second, if that's okay. That's all right. He's already, so Karen has second, and now all in favor, please raise your hand. We are now adjourned.